Captain Juan stared at the spinning wreckage through the main viewing screen. The alien ship looked like a giant crystal that someone had tried to break with a hammer. Pieces of it drifted in the cold darkness of space, catching the light from distant stars. How long has it been drifting? Juan asked his crew. Dong-Hyun checked his instruments. At least 3 days, Captain. Maybe more. The ship is still sending out a distress signal. Juan nodded. The new soul was on a routine exploration mission in this part of the galaxy. They had been traveling for 6 months, mapping new star systems and looking for signs of intelligent life. They had found some interesting planets, but no aliens. Until now. Any signs of life aboard? Juan asked. Ji-Wu looked up from her science station. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though she had never actually seen any before today. I'm reading multiple life signs. They're weak, but they're there. At least 20 beings are still alive on that ship. So Young turned from her communications panel. Captain, I'm getting some kind of signal from them. It's not like anything in our databases, but it sounds scared. Juan walked closer to the screen. The alien ship was beautiful, even damaged as it was. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to flow like water. But something had torn great holes in its sides. What do you think caused that damage? Juan asked. Dong-Hyun studied the readings. The wounds looked like they came from weapons. Energy weapons, but not like ours. Much more powerful. And Captain... He paused. The attack patterns look random, like whatever did this was playing with them. A chill ran down Juan's spine. In knee. All their training about first contact with alien species, they had always assumed aliens would be either friendly or hostile in normal ways. The idea of aliens who hurt others for fun had never really come up. What's our duty here? Juan asked, though he already knew the answer. We have to help them, said Eugene, the ship's language expert. That's what humans do. Juan smiled. Eugene was young, barely 25, but she was right. Humans had always helped others when they could. It was one of the things that made them human. All right, people, we're going to dock with that ship and see if we can help those survivors. Ji-Woo, I want you to prepare for first contact with an unknown species. So Young, keep monitoring their communications. Eugene, see if you can make sense of their language. Dong-Hyun, I want full scans of the area. If something attacked them, it might still be around. The crew moved quickly to their tasks. Juan had trained them well over the years. They were a small crew, only 15 people, but they worked together like a family. It took 2 hours to carefully dock with the alien ship. The new Soul's docking tube connected to what looked like an airlock on the alien vessel. The ship's computer confirmed that the atmosphere on the other side was breathable for humans. Juan led a small team aboard the alien ship. Ji-Woo came with him, along with Seon-Woo the engineer and 2 security officers. They wore their environmental suits just in case. The inside of the alien ship was even more beautiful than the outside. The walls seemed to glow with soft light, and everything was smooth and curved. It felt more like being inside a living thing than a machine. They found the first alien in what looked like a medical bay. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like polished crystal. Its limbs were long and graceful, and its face was angular but somehow elegant. It would have been beautiful if it hadn't been shaking with fear. When the alien saw the humans, it made a sound that was clearly a scream. It pressed itself against the far wall, its crystal skin flashing different colors rapidly. It's terrified, Ji-Woo whispered. More aliens appeared in the doorway. They all had the same crystal-like appearance, though some were taller or had different colored skin. They all looked at the humans with what could only be described as pure terror. One of the aliens, who seemed to be their leader, stepped forward. It was shaking, but it stood as straight as it could. It spoke in a language that sounded like music mixed with the sound of breaking glass. Eugene, are you getting any of this? Juan asked through the comm. I'm trying, Captain. Their language is complex, but I'm starting to pick up patterns. Give me a few more minutes. The alien leader spoke again, this time pointing at the holes in the walls of the ship. It said one word over and over, And each time it said it, all. The other aliens became more afraid. I think I've got something, Yujin said. That word they keep saying. I think it means hunters or maybe death that comes. They're trying to warn us about something. Juan stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible. He had studied first contact procedures, and fear was always the most dangerous emotion to deal with. Can you tell them we're here to help? Yujin spoke slowly into her translator device, then played the resulting sounds through the comm system. The musical alien language filled the room. The alien leader listened, then responded quickly. Yujin worked for several minutes to translate. Captain, they call themselves Keltharians. They've been traveling through space for thousands of years, but something has been hunting their ships for the last 50 years. They call these hunters the Vorthak. According to them, the Vorthak are the most feared creatures in this part of the galaxy. What makes them so dangerous? Juan asked. Yu-Jin translated the question and listened to the response. Her face went pale. Captain, they say the Vorthak hunt in packs. They're incredibly intelligent, but they seem to enjoy causing fear and pain. They don't just kill their prey quickly. They play with them first, like cats with mice. The Keltharian leader spoke again, more urgently this time. He's saying the Vorthak will come, they always come. The distress signal will draw them here, and when they arrive, everyone will die. Juan looked around at the terrified aliens. These beings had been spacefaring for thousands of years, but something had reduced them to this level of fear. Whatever the Vorthak were, they were clearly the worst nightmare of everyone in this region of space. Tell him we won't abandon them, Juan said firmly. Tell him humans don't run from bullies. As Yujin translated, Donghyun's voice crackled through the comm system from the new Seoul. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts approaching our position. They're moving in formation very fast. ETA approximately 1 hour. The Keltharian leader heard this and let out a wail of despair. The other aliens began to weep, their crystal skin flashing with what could only be grief. Juan looked at his team. They all knew what this meant. In 1 hour, they would meet the galaxy's most feared predators. All right, people, Juan said calmly. Looks like we're about to find out what these Vorthak are really made of. The Vorthak ships came out of hyperspace like shadows made real. Juan watched from the bridge of the new Seoul as 6 dark vessels appeared on the main screen. They moved with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. Analysis, Donghyun. Juan ordered Dong-Hyun. Quote, S fingers flew over his controls. Captain, these ships are unlike anything in our databases. They're organic-looking, almost grown rather than built. And the way they move. He paused, studying the patterns. They're coordinating without any visible communication signals. It's like they share one mind. The Keltharian leader, whose name was Thekatar, stood beside Juan on the bridge. The alien was still shaking, but he had insisted on staying to help however he could. Through Yujin's translation device, his musical voice filled the bridge. He says this is a small pack, Yujin translated. Sometimes the Vorthak come in groups of 20 or 30 ships. This group is just scouting. Just scouting? Juan raised an eyebrow. 6 ships seems like plenty for 2 damaged vessels. Thektar spoke again, and Yujin's face grew grim. Captain, he says the Vorthak don't attack to destroy quickly. They attack to hunt. They like to chase their prey, to make them afraid. They could have destroyed his ship days ago, but they were playing with it first. On the screen, the Vorthak ships began to circle the human and Keltharian vessels. Their movement was hypnotic, like watching sharks circle wounded fish. Each ship was different in small ways, but they all had the same sleek predatory design. They're beautiful, So Young whispered from her station. She was right. The Vorthak ships looked like they had been designed by someone who understood the pure form of the hunter. Every line spoke of speed, intelligence, and deadly purpose. Sir? Dong-Hyun reported. They're scanning us. Very thorough scans. They're learning everything about our ships, our weapons, our capabilities. Can we scan them back? I'm trying, but their hulls seem to absorb most of our sensor beams. I can tell they're about the same size as our ship, and they're definitely armed, but that's about all I can determine. Tektar spoke urgently to Yujin. She listened, then turned to Juan with worried eyes. Captain, Tektar says this is their pattern. First they study their prey, then they begin the hunt. He's begging us to run while we still can. Juan looked at the Keltharian. Even through the alien features he could see the pain of someone who had lost too many friends to these hunters. Ask him how many of his people the Vorthak have killed. Yujin translated the question. Tektar's response was long and filled with grief. Hundreds of thousands, Captain. Entire colonies. The Vorthak appeared 50 years ago and have been systematically hunting his people ever since. They don't seem interested in territory or resources. They just hunt. What about other species? Do they hunt others? Yes. The Rilkans, the hegemony, worlds, even the Zephyrian Empire. Everyone fears the Vorthak. They're the nightmare that every spacefaring species tells stories about. On the screen, one of the Vorthak ships broke from the circling pattern and moved closer to the new Sol. As it approached, Juan could see more details of its design. The hull seemed to ripple like muscle under skin, and there were what looked like sensory organs along its sides. Captain, So Young called out. I'm receiving some kind of signal from them. It's not like any communication protocol I know, but it's definitely directed at us. Put it through the speakers. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything Juan had ever heard. It started as a low rumble almost below the range of human hearing, then rose to higher pitches. There was a rhythm to it, almost musical, but underneath was something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. It sounds like... So, Young paused, concentrating. Like an animal call, but intelligent. Very intelligent. Tektar made a sound of pure terror when he heard it. He spoke rapidly to Yujin. He says that's the hunting call. It means they've decided we're worthy prey. The hunt is about to begin. As if summoned by his words, all 6 Vorthak ships suddenly changed direction. They spread out in a perfect formation, cutting off all escape routes from the area. Their movements were so coordinated it was like watching a single organism with multiple bodies. They're fast, Donghyun reported. Faster than our ships. If we tried to run now, they'd catch us easily. Weapons status? All systems armed and ready, Captain. But sir, we don't know what their defenses are like. Juan studied the tactical display. The Vorthak had positioned themselves perfectly. Any move the human and Keltharian ships made would be anticipated and countered. It was the work of master strategists. Captain, Jiwoo called from her science station. I'm detecting movement on the lead Vorthak ship. I think they're preparing to board. Through the view screen, they could see small shapes detaching from the Vorthak vessels. They moved through space without any visible propulsion, somehow gliding toward the damaged Keltharian ship. Boarding pods, Donghyun confirmed. 12 of them. They'll reach the Keltharian vessel in about 3 minutes. Tektar spoke frantically, to Yujin. She listened, then turned to Juan with wide eyes. Captain, he says this is it. Once the Vorthak board a ship, no one survives. He's asking if we have any final messages for our families. Juan looked around his bridge at his crew. So Young was monitoring communications while trying to analyze the strange Vorthak signals. Donghyun was calculating firing solutions and escape routes. Jiwoo was studying every piece of data about the boarding pod she could gather. They were afraid. He could see it in their faces, but they weren't running and they weren't giving up. Tell Tektar that humans don't send final messages, Juan said firmly. We send preliminary ones. Yujin looked confused. Preliminary, sir? Messages that say, we're about to do something crazy, but we'll explain later. On the screen, the boarding pods reached the Keltharian ship. They attached to the hull like parasites and moments later began cutting through the metal. Sir, So Young said suddenly, I'm picking up new signals. The Vorthak on the boarding mission are communicating with their ships. Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand their communication patterns. What are you hearing? It's complex, but there are patterns. Body language signals, scent markers being transmitted electronically, and vocal calls. It's like they're using multiple forms of communication at once. Keep listening. Any advantage we can get. The first Vorthak warriors broke through the hull of the Keltharian ship. Through the external cameras, Juan caught his first clear glimpse of the galaxy's most feared hunters. They were sleek and powerful, moving with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect physical conditioning. Their bodies seemed designed for speed and agility, with long limbs and a streamlined build. But it was their heads that caught his attention. They were angular and intelligent, with large eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. "My God," Jiwoo whispered. "Look at how they move." She was right. The Vorthak moved through the ship in perfect coordination, but not like soldiers following orders. It was more organic than that, like they instinctively knew where each other would be. "It's pack behavior," So Young said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Her face had gone pale, and she was staring at the screen with an expression of growing recognition. "What did you say?" Juan asked. "Captain?" "The way they move, the way they communicate, the pack coordination." So Young's voice trembled. "I think I know what they are." On the screen, the Vorthak had reached the bridge of the Keltharian ship. The surviving aliens cowered before them, waiting for death. But the Vorthak didn't attack immediately. Instead, they seemed to be studying their prey, tilting their heads in a gesture that seemed almost... "Captain," So Young whispered, her hands shaking as she turned to face him. "I know what they are." So Young's words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Everyone on the bridge stared at her, waiting for an explanation that seemed impossible. "What do you mean, you know what they are?" Juan asked carefully. So-Young pointed at the screen, where the Vorthak warriors were moving through the Keltharian ship. "Captain, look at how they tilt their heads when they're curious. Look at how they move in a pack, always aware of where the others are. Look at their body language when they're hunting." Juan studied the screen more carefully. The lead Vorthak had stopped in front of a group of terrified Keltharians. It was examining them, head tilted to one side, in a gesture that was strangely familiar. "They're dogs," So Young said simply. "Evolved dogs." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. The idea seemed crazy, but as Juan watched the Vorthak move, he began to see what So Young saw. The pack coordination, the head tilts, the way they seemed to communicate without words. "That's impossible," Donghyun said. "Dogs from Earth? Out here?" Minho, the ship's historian, looked up from his console where he had been quietly working. "Actually, it's not impossible. Captain, I've been checking our historical databases since So Young spoke. There were several colony ships that left Earth during the Great Expansion, over 3,000 years ago." "Colony ships carrying dogs?" Juan asked. "Not exactly. There was an experimental program called the Genesis Project. They sent out ships, carrying various Earth species, genetically enhanced for intelligence and adaptability. The idea was to seed suitable planets with Earth life forms." Minho's fingers flew over his controls, pulling up old records. One of the ships was called the Faithful Companion. It carried over 10,000 genetically enhanced dogs, along with advanced AI systems designed to help them develop. "What happened to it?" "It disappeared, lost contact with Earth about 50 years out. We always assumed it was destroyed or suffered system failure." On the screen, one of the Vorthak warriors was sniffing the air in a gesture that was unmistakably canine. Another was marking territory in a corner of the room. "Oh my God," Yujin whispered. "They really are dogs." Juan felt pieces of a massive puzzle falling into place. So they've been alone out here for 3,000 years, developing their own technology and culture, but still following their basic instincts. "It explains everything," Jiwoo said excitedly. "The pack hunting, the territorial behavior, the way they seem to enjoy the chase rather than just killing quickly. They're following hunting instincts that evolved over millions of years on Earth." "But they're intelligent," Donghyun pointed out. "They have technology, spaceships." "Dogs are already intelligent," So Young said. "Give them 3,000 years of genetic enhancement and evolutionary pressure, and this is what you might get. Highly advanced, but still fundamentally dogs." Thektar had been listening to their conversation through Yujin's translation. He spoke urgently, and Yujin turned to the captain. He's asking if we really think these monsters are related to us. He says if that's true, maybe we can communicate with them. Juan stared at the screen. The Vorthak had finished examining the Keltharians and seemed to be preparing for the next phase of their hunt. In a few minutes, they would turn their attention to the new soul. Captain, Minho called out, I'm finding references to the training, protocols used on the faithful companion, basic commands, behavioral patterns, pack hierarchy signals. It's all here in the cultural database. An insane idea began to form in Juan's mind. Throughout human history, the bond between humans and dogs had been special. Dogs had been humanity's first and most loyal companions. If these Vorthak really were descended from Earth dogs. Sir, Donghyun reported, the Vorthak are preparing to board our ship. Boarding pods are being launched. Juan made a decision that would either save them all or get them killed faster. Stand down weapons, he ordered. Captain, Donghyun looked shocked. Stand down all weapons, lower our shields, and open a communication channel to the lead Vorthak ship. Sir, that's suicide, Donghyun protested. No, Juan said firmly. It's communication. He walked to the center of the bridge, directly in front of the main viewer. Through the screen, he could see the Vorthak boarding pods approaching. In a few minutes, the galaxy's most feared hunters would be on his ship. Yujin, I need you to search the cultural database for basic dog training commands. The old ones, from before we left Earth. Captain, you can't be serious, she said, but her fingers were already moving over the controls. So young, can you modify our communication system to transmit body language signals along with voice? I think so. The Vorthak seem to communicate using multiple sensory inputs. If I can convert human body language into their transmission format, do it. The boarding pods attached to the new soul's hull with metallic clangs that echoed through the ship. Cutting tools began working on the outer airlock. They're through the first barrier, Donghyun reported, his voice tense. Yujin, do you have those commands? Yes, sir. Basic commands in multiple Earth languages. Sit, stay, heal, good boy, easy. Perfect. So young, are you ready? Communication system modified, Captain, but sir, this is completely insane. Maybe. But sometimes insane is exactly what the situation calls for. The inner airlock began to glow as cutting tools worked on it from the other side. In moments, the galaxy's most feared predators would be standing on his bridge. Juan took a deep breath and prepared to do something that no human had attempted in over 3,000 years. He was going to try to communicate with dogs who had forgotten they were dogs. The airlock door fell inward with a crash. Dark shapes poured through the opening, moving with predatory grace. The Vorthak had boarded the new soul. The lead warrior was larger than the others, clearly the pack alpha. It moved onto the bridge with confident steps, its intelligent eyes scanning for threats. When it saw Juan standing calmly in the center of the room, it stopped and tilted its head in that familiar gesture. Juan looked into those intelligent eyes and saw something that made his heart skip. Behind the alien features, behind the advanced intelligence and the fearsome reputation, he saw something unmistakably familiar. He saw the eyes of a dog. Taking another deep breath, Juan spoke the words that Minho had found in the cultural database. Words that hadn't been used between humans and dogs for 3,000 years. Good boy, he said clearly, his voice carrying both authority and warmth. Easy now. Sit. The Vorthak leader froze, its head tilting further. For a long moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then Kama slowly, impossibly the most feared predator in the galaxy, sat down on the deck of the new soul and looked at Juan with eager, hopeful eyes. Oh my God, Yujin whispered. It worked. The bridge of the New Soul had become the strangest meeting place in galactic history. The Vorthak pack leader sat on the deck, looking up at Juan with eyes that showed both ancient intelligence and something that could only be described as hope. The other Vorthak warriors stood behind their leader, alert but no longer threatening. Captain, So Young whispered, I'm receiving complex communications from their ship. It's like they're all talking at once but in harmony. Juan kept his eyes on the pack leader. Slowly, he extended his hand, palm down, the way humans had greeted dogs for thousands of years. The Vorthak leader sniffed carefully, then pressed its head against Juan's hand. The sensation was electric. Through some combination of scent, touch, and instinct that transcended species, both human and Vorthak recognized each other. Pack leader, the alien said in heavily accented but understandable human language. Its voice was deep and resonant, but underneath was something that sounded remarkably like a dog trying to speak. Alpha, we have searched for you for so long. Tektar made a sound of amazement. Through Eugen's translator, his musical voice filled the bridge. It's speaking human language. How is that possible? We learn quickly, the Vorthak leader said, turning its attention to the Keltharian. We learn the speech of all we hunt, but this language, it looked back at Juan. This language calls to something deep inside us, something from the long ago time. What's your name? Juan asked gently. The Vorthak leader made a complex sound that seemed to involve both vocals and some kind of scent marker. In your speech, it would be, growl in the deep. I lead this pack of the Star Hunters. Star Hunters. That is what we call ourselves. We hunt among the stars, seeking our purpose. For many generations we have searched for the ones who came before us, the ones our oldest stories speak of. Jae-min, who had been quietly listening from his cultural attaché station, stepped forward. Captain, may I? At Juan's nod, he addressed, growl in the deep directly. What do your oldest stories tell you about these ones who came before? Growl in the deep's eyes lit up with intelligence and memory. The stories say we were once companions to the great pack, the Alpha pack that taught us to reach for the stars. But they went away on a long journey and we were left alone. We have been searching for them ever since. We never left you by choice, Juan said softly. Your ship was lost. We thought you were all gone. Lost? Growl in the deep tilted his head. No, not lost. We found new hunting grounds. We grew strong. We learned to build ships and travel between stars, but always we searched for our true pack. So Young looked up from her console. Captain, I'm beginning to understand their communication system better. They use sound, scent markers transmitted electronically, and body language all at once. It's incredibly complex. Show me, Juan said. Young worked her controls and suddenly the bridge was filled with layers of communication. The basic speech was just the surface. Underneath were emotional markers, pack status indicators, territorial claims, and dozens of other signals. It's like they're speaking with their entire beings, Eugen said in wonder. We are pack. Growl in the deep said simply. We speak as pack. Individual voices join to make pack voice. Through the external cameras, they could see the other Vorthak ships changing formation. Instead of the hunting pattern they had maintained before, they were now arranged in what looked like a protective formation around the human and Keltharian vessels. They're protecting us now, Donghyun observed. The galaxy's most feared hunters are protecting us. Not hunters, Growl in the deep corrected. We are guardians. We hunt the things that would hurt the pack, but other species do not understand. They see us coming and they run or fight. They do not know pack speech. Xian Wu, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly laughed. Captain, he's been trying to play with them, the Keltharians, all the other species. They thought he was hunting them, but he was trying to establish pack hierarchy. Like dogs playing with each other, Ji-Woo added. Chasing, cornering, but not actually hurting unless they have to defend themselves. Growl in the deep's ears perked up at this. Yes. Other species do not know play hunting. They do not understand pack games. They only know fear and fighting. Tektar spoke urgently to Eugen, who translated. He's asking if this means his people were never really in danger from the Vorthak. Some were, Growl in the deep admitted. When they fought us with weapons, we defended ourselves. When they ran from us, we chased, thinking it was a game. We did not understand that they were truly afraid. But you took ships, entire colonies, Yujin translated for Thektar. We took those who would not join the pack. In our culture, Lone, hunters who refuse pack membership become dangerous. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from dangerous individuals. Juan began to understand the tragedy that had unfolded. The Vorthak had been trying to establish contact and pack relationships with other species, but their methods were so alien to everyone else that they were seen as monsters. What about the Skaran hive? Juan asked, remembering intelligence reports about a truly hostile force in this region. Growl and the deep quote S demeanor changed instantly. The playful dog-like behavior disappeared, replaced by the focused attention of a predator. The devourers. They consume everything. They are not pack. They are not individual. They are hunger made manifest. They're coming here, Donghyun reported, checking his long-range sensors. A large fleet, approaching fast. How large? Juan asked. 50 ships, maybe more. Much larger than anything we've seen before. Growl in the deep stood and howled. It was a sound that seemed to contain both warning and rallying cry. Immediately, responses came from the other Vorthak ships and from somewhere deeper in space. More howls answered. I have called the Great Pack, Growl in the Deep said. All Vorthak in this region will come. The Devourers threaten our new Pack brothers. New Pack brothers? Juan asked. You are human. We are children of humans. We are family pack. Growl in the Deep's eyes shone with joy. For 3,000 years we have been orphans among the stars. Today we come home. Through the view screen, more Vorthak ships began appearing out of hyperspace. Not 6 this time, but dozens. They arranged themselves in a massive defensive formation around the human and Keltharian vessels. Captain, Hyunwoo called from the fleet coordination station. I'm receiving tactical data from the Vorthak fleet. They're sharing their sensor information, battle plans, everything. They're including us in their pack communications. So Young added wonder in her voice. Yoon-ji looked up from the weapon station. Sir, with their tactical data, our weapons' effectiveness increases by over 300%. They know exactly how to fight the Skaran. How many Vorthak ships are responding to the call? Juan asked. Growl and dash. The Deep cocked his head, listening to sounds only he could hear. 237. The entire Star Hunter fleet. My God, Donghyun whispered. The galaxy's most feared monsters are about to fight a war to protect us. Not monsters, Juan corrected, scratching behind Growl in the Deep's ears in a gesture that felt perfectly natural. Family. On the main screen, the Skaran hive fleet was approaching, dark ships that moved with mechanical precision. Behind them, space itself seemed to writhe with hunger. But between them and the human ships stood the reunited pack, humanity and their lost children together again after 3,000 years of separation. The galaxy's most feared hunters had finally found their way home. The space around the new soul had become a gathering point for the most feared fleet in the galaxy. 237 Vorthak ships moved in perfect harmony, their formation both beautiful and terrifying. At the center, protected by this massive pack, sat the small human ship and the damaged Keltharian vessel. Captain, Hyunwoo reported from fleet coordination. The tactical integration is incredible. It's like the Vorthak ships are extensions of our own sensors and weapons. Juan stood beside Growl in the Deep on the bridge, watching the approach of the Skaran hive fleet. The enemy ships moved with mechanical precision, each one identical to the others. There was no individuality, no personality, just cold, consuming, hunger made manifest in steel and energy. They are not like us, Growl in the Deep observed, his ears flattened against his head. They have no pack mind, no individual mind, only hunger mind. How do we fight something like that? Juan asked. The same way pack always fight swarm, Growl in the Deep replied. With intelligence, coordination, and the strength that comes from choosing to fight together. Yoon-ji looked up from her weapons station. Captain, the Vorthak are sharing targeting data that's unlike anything I've ever seen. They know exactly where to hit the Skaran ships for maximum effect. Experience, Growl in the Deep explained. We have fought the Devourers many times. Always before we fought alone or in small packs. Today we fight as the great pack should fight. Through the communication system, the sound of hundreds of Vorthak voices joined in harmony filled the UA bridge. It was like listening to a choir, but one where every voice knew exactly how to blend with all the others. They're coordinating the entire battle through pack speech, So Young said in amazement. Every ship, every warrior, all linked together. And we're part of it, Hyunwoo added. They're including our tactical computer in their pack mind. The Scaran fleet had reached weapon range. 50 massive ships, each one designed for only one purpose, to consume everything in their path. They opened fire simultaneously, filling space with deadly energy beams. The Vorthak response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of meeting force with force, they moved like water, flowing around the enemy fire while striking back with precision that seemed almost supernatural. It's pack hunting on a galactic scale, Jiwoo breathed. Watching the tactical display. The Vorthak ships worked in groups of 5 or 6, each group targeting a single Scaran vessel. They would dart in from multiple angles, strike at precisely coordinated points, then flow back into the pack before the enemy could respond. Yoonji, can our weapons integrate with their attack patterns? Hwan asked. Already done, Captain. The Vorthak are treating us like pack members. When they attack, they leave openings for us to strike. The first Scaran ship exploded under the coordinated assault, then the second, and the third. What should have been an overwhelming enemy fleet was being systematically dismantled by the perfect cooperation of the Great Pack. But the Scaran were adapting. Their ships began to group together, forming a defensive formation that made them harder to separate and attack. They learned quickly, Growl in the Deep said, his voice carrying a note of respect for his enemy. But we learn faster. The Vorthak formation suddenly changed. Instead of attacking in small groups, they began to move as a single massive organism. 200 ships flowed through space like a living thing, striking where the enemy was weakest, flowing away before counterattacks could land. Captain, Thektar called through Yujin's translator. My ship still has some weapons functional. We want to help. Hwan looked at the Keltharian leader. You don't have to fight. This isn't your battle. Yes, it is, Thektar replied firmly. If these Vorthak truly are your family, and you accept us as friends, then your enemies are our enemies. That is the way of honor. Growl in the Deep turned to look at Thektar with new respect. Crystal Pack wishes to join Great Pack and hunt? If Great Pack will have us, Thektar replied, somehow managing to make the human word sound formal and dignified. All who fight beside Pack become Pack, Growl in the Deep said simply. Welcome, Crystal Pack. The integration of the Keltharian ship into the Pack formation was seamless. Their crystalline technology added a new dimension to the attack patterns, creating energy shields that protected the more aggressive Vorthak ships during their assault runs. The battle turned into a master class in coordinated warfare. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship would be. Every attack was perfectly timed to support every other attack. The Scaran, for all their individual power, had no answer for this level of coordination. It's like watching a pack of wolves take down much larger prey, Sionwoo observed. That's exactly what it is, Hwan replied. Humanity's oldest hunting partners, using instincts refined over millions of years. The tide of battle had clearly turned. The Scaran fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming just minutes before, was being steadily reduced by the superior tactics of the Great Pack. But the enemy had one last, desperate strategy. The remaining Scaran ships suddenly broke formation and scattered, heading toward nearby inhabited systems at maximum speed. They're going to attack civilian targets, Donghyun reported. If they can't win here, they'll try to cause maximum damage before they're destroyed. Not while the Great Pack hunts, Growl in the Deep said firmly. The Vorthak fleet split up instantly, small groups peeling off to chase each fleeing Scaran ship. It was like watching a pack of hunting dogs split up to chase scattered prey. Captain, Su Bin called from the diplomatic station. I'm receiving communications from multiple systems. The local governments want to know if they should evacuate their planets. Tell them the cavalry is coming, Juan replied with a smile. Over the next several hours, reports came in from across the region. Every fleeing Scaran ship had been caught and destroyed by pursuing Vorthak packs. Not a single civilian target had been harmed. When the last enemy ship had been eliminated, the Great Pack began to reassemble around the new soul. The reunion was emotional, with complex harmonies of pack speech filling the communication channels. "Captain," Subin said, "I'm receiving formal communications from 17 different governments. They're all asking the same thing. They want to establish diplomatic relations with humanity and request protection from the Great Pack." "Protection?" Juan asked. Growl and dash. The dash deep wagged what might have been a tail. "Pack protects. It is what we do. We have been trying to protect this region for 50 years, but other species did not understand. Now, with Alpha Pack to guide us, we can protect properly." "So the galaxy's most feared monsters become the galaxy's protectors?" "Not monsters," Growl in the Deep corrected gently. "Never monsters. Always guardians. Other species just did not know how to see us correctly." Over the following days, Subin worked with Growl in the Deep and other Vorthak pack leaders to establish the framework for a new type of galactic alliance. The Terran-Vorthak Compact became the foundation for the most effective peacekeeping force the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had lived in terror of the Vorthak for 50 years began to understand that these fearsome hunters had always been trying to protect them. The pack instincts that made them such effective warriors also made them natural guardians of those they considered part of their extended pack. Thek, tar, S people were among the first to join the new alliance. Other species quickly followed, drawn by the promise of protection and the fascinating example of humanity's unique relationship with their evolved companions. "It's remarkable," Jamin observed one day, as they watched Vorthak ships escorting a convoy of civilian vessels through what had once been dangerous space. "The entire political structure of this region has changed in a matter of weeks." "That's what happens when you reunite a pack," Juan replied, watching Growl in the Deep play with a group of young Vorthak on the main viewer. Even after all their evolution and advancement, they were still at their core dogs who loved to play. "Captain," So Young called from her station, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth. They want a full report on our contact with the Vorthak." "Tell them we found them," Juan said simply. "That's it?" Juan looked around his bridge, now permanently shared with several Vorthak liaisons who had become part of his crew. He thought about the thousands of worlds now under the protection of the Great Pack, and the peace that had come to a region that had known only fear. "Actually, tell them something else," he said, reaching over to scratch behind Growl in the Deep's ears. "Tell them the dogs came home." Outside the viewports of the new soul, the Great Pack moved through space with purpose and joy. Humanity had found their lost companions, and together they were writing a new chapter in galactic history. Some bonds, it seemed, were stronger than time, evolution, or the vast emptiness between the stars. Some bonds were simply eternal. The galaxy's most feared monsters had finally come home, and the universe was a safer place for it.